How you
How
doing?
you doing?
Good. What's Owen
Good,
Shott doing on
good.
Monday?
Yeah.
That might be my first question.
Uh, Coffee. Got my little ride cup.
Sweet.
Enjoy, and so just kind of looking at some files and things like that. Probably pretty standard Monday morning for you too. I don't know. I normally don't do much on Mondays, but
Monday is my big work day for me.
yeah.
It's like all the athletes, making sure everybody did stuff on the weekend, what's going on this week,
Right.
content stuff. So yeah, similar thing. It's always good to have a recovery day. It's amazing how much more you can get done when you ride 1 hour versus 4 hours.
Right. Yeah. Because you know how it is. 4 hours is not really 4 hours. It's there's probably a stop in there. So now you got 4.5, 420, and then this and that, and clean your bike. And you're like, man, it's half the day is gone.
Dude, the getting ready. I mean, and I love, so especially when I was in upstate New York, getting ready could be like a 40-minute thing with all the layers and the stuff and the cream to put on
Yeah.
your face and da da
Yeah.
da. Da. It's like, man, you're down in Florida. Where do you ever wear arm warmers? I was actually thinking of you the other day. I went to put on arm warmers and I was thinking of this call. And I'm like, I wonder if Owen's ever worn arm warmers in Florida.
Dude, I'm always cold.
Are you?
So, yeah, like,
All right.
guys will make fun of me all the time. And I mean, it'll be, 60 something. And I'm just, all right, give me my arm warmers. And they're like, what? Like, I'm always cold. So,
Interesting.
like, even it was raining Saturday, and I grabbed this rain jacket, and it's like, you get down the road 30 minutes and you're already sweating, so you're already wet, but I just didn't want to be cold, like
Yeah.
it was
There's
only
something to be
70.
said for that about the cold. Like I've never been a fan of the rain jacket because of the fact that you're sweating, but
Hmm.
you are hot and sweating as opposed to possibly cold and sweating. And I think of like Joe Martin
Hmm.
last year when it rained at the road race. If I had had a rain jacket on, I would have been in a better position. But um, dude, we're talking about Florida. Let's jump into the origin story for people that don't know Owen yet. If you're at a bike race and Owen's in it, there's a good chance he's going to be on the podium. He's going to be animating. I really have started this series trying to pick cyclists that I've engaged with, raced with, whatever, that have just, I know are knowledgeable in the sport. It's more than just watts or they're extremely talented athletes. I think it's really interesting story from what I've gathered from you of coming from Florida, and I'll let you tell your own story, but being in running, being in triathlon, being in cycling, you have just this depth of endurance sport experience that I know people will be able to pick from. And kind of what's your story? How did you get into? When did you start with running? Have you always been running?
Yeah, so I was running since I can remember, and so I moved to Jacksonville on a track and field scholarship. So I was a distance runner. And yeah, so moved up here in 99 and just kind of got into that circle, and started working at a local running store, and just loved running. Was
Mhm.
pretty good at it. And I could, like, here we have the big 15K national championship for running every year. And I had finished in the top 30 one time. And so I was always like good enough to like compete with the top women. So like I'd always, like, every year I'd lose to, like, Dina Castor, or Jen Rhines, if some of the top women runners back then. And so I was always like, man, I'm just, good enough to be with the top women, but um so yeah, like, I think I moved in with a couple guys, or no, I kind of started. I had a buddy who wanted to start a triathlon series up here. And so I was like, man, triathlon would be cool. I've kind of done the running thing. Like, I'll try it, and literally, I think I showed up at the first race. I hadn't really ridden a bike, hadn't swam, and I think I finished third or fourth overall. And everybody's like, what? You didn't even, this is your third time on the bike? And I'm like, yeah, man, and
Yeah.
but I had really good running fitness coming in. So, like, I was like a 15-minute 5K guy. Like, I was running well.
Uh-huh.
Um, so yeah, so got into that, and then qualified for the world championships in triathlon, and for the half iron distance, and had finished like a top 10 at New Orleans one year. they'd actually canceled the swim, so it was a run, bike, run. And I mean, I was just womping on pros. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm on the run course, just flying by these pros, and they're like, well, "Who's this guy?" You know, and
Cool.
so yeah, so the swim was just always my downfall. So then I kind of morphed into the duathlon side of
I
things,
was
and
gonna ask. Okay.
qualified for worlds for that. And I was about maybe a month or two out, and I was actually training with this guy named Dirk Bockel. Um, Bockel had finished fourth at Kona twice. So he's, you know, Kona's the world championships. He's finished fourth. I mean, you know, the years that Craig Alexander set in the course record. But yeah, so I was training with him, and then my knee started hurting running. And so I
And when
had
is
this,
this? When are we talking?
um, 2000, probably late 2013,
Okay.
2014 almost. Yeah. So, you know, I had kind of went over and won a couple age group time trial championships.
I
You
saw
know,
that. When
you
if
know,
you
for the
if you scope
yeah,
out Owen on road results, it's like
yeah,
the first couple seasons, it's like two races. Two races. I'm
yeah,
like, TT, this dude's coming from triathlon. Okay, I like it.
right, yeah. So that, you know, I was showing up winning the 30 to 34, you know, state championship, and again, I had some roommates that were really cool that were really into mountain biking and road riding. So like, yeah, once the knee went out, I mean, I went and, you know, I know everybody in Jacksonville. I mean, literally, I was in the Jaguars headquarters with this gentleman named Mike Ryan, who's one of the most knowledgeable people I've ever met in my world and in my life. And he's like, dude, I don't know what's going on. You know, he's like, you got to do this and that and that. And it just never, I couldn't, I mean, I was scared to take a step off like a curb. It was hurting so bad. I mean, like,
Wow.
you know, and nobody could tell me anything. You know, you got some chondromalacia, you got some, you know, or maybe you got blood. You know, it was just one of those weird things. So I was like, all right, I enjoy riding the bike. I'm gonna go ride the
And you had
bike.
no pain riding.
No pain riding. No, like there was about a week I couldn't stand up and accelerate, but yeah, I mean, I was scared to walk, but I could ride, you know, 60 miles, no problem. So
Crazy how that happens sometimes, isn't it? It's just like
it,
one activity, nope. Other one, go
yeah.
ahead.
Yeah. And so, yeah, so that was really, you know, that was probably like the 2014 range where I was like, all right, I'm going to go after this. And yeah, you might probably know my results. I have to look back at them sometimes. And I was like, wait a minute, what year? But I
Yeah.
just know 2015 was the first year I did Masters Nationals in Ogden, Utah. And so I knew I went in to that year and I was like, I was going good, you know,
Hmm.
like I end up pulling 2 second places and a ninth, you know, and I think it was one of my better national finishes. But yeah, so that was kind of how it went, was just, you know, this runner that was, you know, pretty good. And then triathlete, and, you know, I could whip up on the local scene here. I was just, my swim never got to the point where I could be at that pro level.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, then it was like, all right, I'm just going to do this biking thing. A lot of guys know David Gutton plan.
Hmm.
So my big pitch on here is I've always had a coach most of my life,
Hmm.
and I believe in it, you know. So, and I've been at, you know, I ride at the higher levels, or I've been at the higher levels on most of all this, you know. So from a collegiate coach to so on, I've always had a coach, and I think it's just the best way to learn, best way to educate yourself. You know, you're not, I think you said it best one time. It was something like the tree can't see the forest or something like
Yeah,
that.
it's hard to see. Yeah, it's hard to see it's hard to see the forest when you're staring at the trees.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. And so I was like, man, you know, and then, you know, it's like doctors don't operate on themselves, all this stuff. So it really, the biggest thing I've gotten from, you know, just life in general is all my coaches, you know. So yeah, David Guttenplan was one of my first cycling coaches. And I mean, it was like, you know, we talk about like 20-minute test all the time and stuff like that. And I think in a couple triathlons, I'd done like maybe, you know, short triathlons, I'd done like 330, 340 for 20 minutes, you know, on a bike
mhm.
split. And I worked with him one winter, you know, and it was like, he's like, go out and ride, you know, 4 to 5 hours at 200 watts. And I'm like, man, I can do that. And I mean, after like 4 hours, I'm like limping home. I'm like, why can't I hold 200 watts anymore? And I'm just like dying, and I didn't get it. And then, that February, I think I went like 381 or something, so it was like a
Yeah,
15
dude.
watt, yeah,
People don't understand that the longer endurance, like we're in an endurance sport, that's
yep,
going to translate to higher power at so much shorter durations. And Raleigh Weaver, I just posted a kind of chat I did with him, and he was like talking about he saw a thing for become a pro cyclist in 7 hours a week. And he's just like, everybody now just wants a shortcut. And,
yep,
if you don't want to do the 4 hour ride, like there's some things that you're not going to accomplish because you don't do that.
right,
And it's understandable. Some people don't have that time, but to have the expectations that you're going to make all the gains that the riders who are putting in the hours are going to make, it just doesn't work that way.
right.
So what's coming from, I mean, it's an interesting transition that you've had because you've jumped into like, hey, I'm gonna go show up at the Masters Nationals, and oh yeah, I got a couple second places. And dude, it's like every nationals you go to, you get a couple podiums, which is mind blowing. To just you're very, very consistent rider, which coming from triathlon, a lot of those athletes have a struggle with understanding bike racing because it's a different pacing, it's a different strategy. You're obviously racing with other people where if you're not doing a draft legal try, you're never even trying to get near someone else. What do you think are a couple tips that you could give to people who are coming from triathlon and saying, hey, you know what? Maybe I want to focus on just one sport, because I think cycling is really picking up that momentum from people that are saying, hey, I don't have time to swim. I don't have time to do one of these. And they
Mm-hmm.
always seem to, from what I see is like they pick the bike. What are a couple things that maybe helped you accelerate your progress? Or, hey, what would you tell Johnny who's coming from trying, now he's a Cat 5? Like, how can he get better quicker?
Man, I guess there's a tons of them, and I made every mistake. I was just like, all right, I'm gonna sit on the front until they just all quit, and then they don't, and then you just go again, and so, and then the race is over, and you're like, why didn't I just wait until the end and like go, or
So
whatever.
that's a perfect one. Like, not
Yeah,
sitting on the front. It's not just a fitness of how fast you can ride.
right, and I think I think it's like people, it's so hard, especially like, because I did come from that triathlon, and I would get so frustrated, and I'd get so mad at those guys, and I'd be like, oh, come on guys, let's just all ride at the front until you all get tired, and then I'll keep going,
Yeah.
and they're like, go have fun, like, and so, yeah, it's, man, it's such a science. And I think it's, compliments to you and Tom Danielson and all the other coaches I've had just along the way that I think, thrown different things in my mind. And now, like, I'm always like, oh man, there's tons of different ways to come at it. But like, one, like, for me, like group rides, they teach such bad habits, and so, yeah,
Oh God, I have to like put that as
yeah.
that might be the title here, because my thoughts on group rides.
Right. But I think there's ways that you can do it, right, Brendan? Like, and I think it's, when you're in a group ride, it's being aware and using it as a practice scenario.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying, hey, don't go do group rides. Like,
100%.
there's times and scenarios for them, but like if we look at like any type of training, like you look at like the Marines, right? Like, they're taught and they're ingrained and like, things are going crazy and they revert to what they know, right? Like, like that's why they do that training. Their basic, like when bombs and things are going off and people are shooting at you, you revert to what you know, and that's why it's ingrained in them. And I think that's the issue. And Florida's a little worse because like Florida's just flat and you can have rides of 50 people plus, and so what happens is in a race, when shit hits the fan, what do? You revert to what you know, right? And so you're thinking, oh, I gotta stay on that wheel and I gotta close that gap, or I can't, and people haven't, if they haven't noticed it yet, like I do the opposite. Like I mean, there's multiple times, at some of the state championships, like, we'll come out of a corner in a road race and I just know what's going to happen. I mean, the first 10 guys are going to gun it and they're going to pedal as hard as they can over 1,000 watts for 15 or 5 seconds or whatever. And then everybody sits up and then the group's sitting there, and I'll come off of a corner every time and open a gap, not purposely open a gap, but I don't want to waste that match. I go, okay, I'll see you guys in 20 seconds. And most of the time people will just jump around you and fill the void in and at all this match. And I'm going, and I just kept paddling 280 watts and I'm like right back with the group. So that's the problem with the group ride is like I'll try to teach some of my athletes that, and they're like, no, like, you don't open gaps, and people are yelling at them for this and that. And so you got to kind of like, train that, I guess, for the group ride. But I don't know. I kind of feel like, learn how to ride group rides, and then you got to like, just as a triathlete, you got to become patient, and go, okay, this is a long, a lot of them just don't have confidence in their sprint. Like I know I didn't, I still don't, and it's like, go practice maybe your sprint, see if you can, and that's another whole different ballgame because that's timing, right? It's not necessarily like, can you get your 5-second power to X, you're going, okay, how do I time this sprint and then, hold it for 20 seconds or something like that.
Right.
But yeah, man, I don't know if that kind of answers your question a little bit, but
the biggest thing I think is that you're always learning. Like you have achieved so much and you're constantly looking to keep learning. I always say that if somebody meets a coach that thinks they know everything, then you should probably move away from that person, simply because training with power is still relatively new. The science is new. There's always new analytics coming out. There's always new ways of approaching things. And I think sometimes we need to like slow it down and, but just keep feeding off of each other and learning more. Cause I mean, where we're going to be in 10 years, we're going to look back and be like, God, like we didn't even know anything back then. So it's just keep trying to stay on the curve and on the knowledge. So my thing with group rides, the bad habits that I see is riders that go out for a 4-hour ride, let's say, and they've really, half of it is coasting. So my big thing is like, hey, if you're going to go for a group ride, actually ride. Don't do a group ride 3 times a week, because a group ride's most likely going to be a hammer fest unless you're in a group that's just riding endurance or whatever. So it's kind of out of your control. So it's that's a training session and it might not really help you with your individual weaknesses. So, do them infrequently. I think they're really good for new riders, have to learn those pace changes and understanding what the surges are. And that's some things that the triathletes sometimes have an issue with because they don't really always train VO2 max or neuromuscular stuff. What's maybe a bad habit that you think comes out of group riding too much, besides the one I think the one you mentioned is really good. Then you only know that situation, then you go race and it's a little bit different. Like you feel like you need to chase everything. You also are learning from people that might not give the best advice. There's a lot of cycling coaches, and then there's everyone else that's also a cycling coach. Like I remember people telling me stuff when I was a Cat 5, and I'm like, I had a coach, and I was, I'd hear these things, and I'd go back and I'd be like, hey man, like someone was talking about this tactic, and he would be like, that is not a race tactic that you want to use. Like this, and this is why, and he would explain it. And so I think, what's maybe one more thing? Because I think this is a good, we're picking on the things that you need to know to avoid maybe from being in a group ride. Do you have any others that off the top of your head?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I learned this from a running coach, Jack Daniels. So he's world renowned. Has got tons of books and stuff like that. But he always said when you walk out the door, you have a purpose or initiative for that day. Like there's a you're not just going and riding or running or whatever. Like there's a purpose, right? You're like, what is today's objective? And so that's kind of something I've came at it, especially, here in Jacksonville. I mean, you honestly could go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday and Sunday and do a group ride. I mean, if guys really wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
So, now it's like having an initiative or a goal when you go to these group workouts and stuff like that. And sometimes it's like what you're saying, like there's one workout I give and it's like, I want the least amount of time in zone 1 possible.
Mm-hmm.
Like no, it's, the workout's called like focus, and it's like, I want 2, 3, and 4, I don't want anything on these ends. Right.
Yeah.
Cause a group ride, it's pretty much here and here, it's almost like a crit.
Smash,
And
coast,
yeah,
smash, coast.
right. And so yeah, so like that's one of the like one of the goals is like, okay, I want your zone 1 to be under 30%. And that's something I learned from you, like when you go out and ride, like, I mean, I remember you're just like, dude, go pedal, to stay on the pedals, like just,
Mm-hmm.
and it was amazing because you want to talk about like one of the systems that you probably don't work in a group ride is like muscular fatigue,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, because you got that coasting and that going. So yeah, I mean, so like I'll want my guys, they'll come back and have like their best 90-minute powers ever. Right. And I'm not
It's
talking about
amazing, isn't it?
normalized. I'm not talking about normalized. I'm talking about 90 minutes just steady.
Pure.
And
It's amazing. I love seeing that. It blows people's mind.
yeah, right. And so once they get that, then I'm going, dude, you just rode, 89% or 92%, whatever, for 90 minutes. Like, who's going to mess with you in a race? Like, they
Yeah.
can't ride away from you, and like, and so like that being one thing, but then also, like we talk about the group ride and it's always like, they're always like, oh, just, welding gaps, as like Frank Treviso would say, there's welding, well, close it down. And that's what the kind of the group ride is. And so I'll teach them like, hey, I'll sit on the front. Let's purposely let these 3 guys go up the road. We're going to slide back and then we're going to practice bridging to the gap, which is great practice, right? Like,
Amazing.
and where can you get that? Like, okay, you can send somebody out and say, hey, practice this interval. You're going to attack for 30 seconds and then, ride at this for, 2 minutes. And that's your bridge attack practice. But in a group ride, you're going, it might take, there's been times like, you get out there and you're going, oh, I don't think I'm going to make it, but you got to like adjust on the fly. Right.
Totally.
You've definitely done that. Like you're a breakaway specialist and it's like, there's times like, oh, I'm going to close that. No problem. And then you get out there and you're going, okay, deep breath,
Yeah.
So I think those are really good things for group rides. Cause I don't want people to like, push away the group rides, but I'm like, go out there, have an objective. What is it, or is it on just sit on the front and I want you to do 30-second anaerobic intervals, right? Mm-hmm. And then go sit in for 4 or 5 minutes, and I think that's one of the, workouts that you used to give me. It was like these 40-second efforts. And then it was like full recovery, like 7 minutes, and I was like, dang, I don't need 7 minutes. But then after you do like 4 or 5 of them, you're like, yeah, I want all 7 minutes.
Yeah.
I don't even want to start the next one, but
yeah.
So yeah, I think that's how I've had to really become creative is, giving a goal, not just, hey, go do the group ride, cause it really is like normally most athletes I bring on, the first thing I look at is I'm like, hey, 62% of your time you're in zone 1, here's your group rides. They're not, but it's tricky for some athletes that are not super strong. Like you and I, we can do our own. I mean, we could do VO2 intervals on the group ride and then sit in and recover. And but you try to tell that to somebody else, they almost have to like check their ego at the front door. And the way like our course is set up sometimes is, hey, you can pull outside of the group, do your 4-minute interval, and then when you're done, pull off. And then you're going to have to maybe make a U-turn and catch the group at the next turn or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just that's going to be the day, it ain't, yeah. I mean, and it's not about winning the group ride either too. Like maybe the goal is to go out there and be tired, and hey, you've already had 2 hard workouts this week. The group ride is just empty in the tank.
Right.
It's gonna, and then you got 2 easy days. So I think there's 100 different ways you can come at it, Brendan. And yeah, it's just getting really creative. And, that's the way I would push people is like, hey, like we've got to come up with a goal,
and goals is when you definitely, there's the difference of training and there's a difference of exercising. Like, are you just doing a bunch of random workouts, or do you have a goal? And I think having purpose for the day is a really excellent way of putting it, because you're talking about having these on the road adjustments. And in this age, and Raleigh kind of hit on this, Raleigh doesn't train with power, and he's kind of seen everybody is so focused only on watts these days. And I really think it's within the past 5 years that everyone is just FTP, what's my VO2 max, all the numbers. But it's, they can tell you what they can do for 20 minutes. They can tell you what they can do for 5 minutes. They know maybe their 30-minute power, but it's like, okay, now go do this weird interval where your power is not just a 5x5, or it's not just this like computerized thing that we're doing. Like, intervals are important, but having the ability to think and adjust on the fly and understanding even things of like how to execute intervals, like how to properly ride the bike when, as you said before, shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
I think, there's a lot of things, and checking the ego is definitely something that we all have to remind ourselves to do, because it's, I had an athlete that was talking about wanting to do the group ride, but also wanted to do the intervals. And I said, well, do the intervals first, make those really quality, right, and then ride to your ride. And they're like, well, I might really have to hang on. I'm like, well, are you okay with that? Or are you trying to win the race that you're training for? Or do you have to win every Tuesday night?
Yeah.
And it was kind of, my first coach, Jason, said that to me one time. He's like, do you want to win on Tuesday, or do you want to win on the weekend? And I was like, I want to win on the weekend. He's like, okay, then do this. And I think it's tough for all of us. You ride against people when you're tired, and you're like, I can usually beat this person. Why am I not crushing them? Well, that's part of the plan. So you can hopefully crush someone even bigger down the road.
And I agree with you. That's kind of my forte is, I'll show up on Tuesday or Thursday nights sometimes, and, they think they've started to learn, but like, I had done 4 hours that morning, so I'm, by the end of the group ride, I'm 6 hours in, and I'm cramping, and I'm just seeing stars, and they're all looking at me like, you okay? And I'm like, again, I'm not here to win the group ride Thursday night. I'm 6 hours in. I'm toasted, and I know I'm going to, and like, we'll come down the final stretch, and I'm not trying to win the sprint. I just sit at the front and go, okay, when you guys want to go by, but I'm going full gas. This is all I got left, and the tank is empty. And there's been a couple, days recently where I'm like, man, that was deep. I don't know if I should have done that, but I agree with you 100% is like, hey, we're not, do you want to win this weekend, or do you, and that it's perfect. It makes sense. Go do your work and then go play, like, why not, So yeah.
What's what do you have as any habits or routines besides, we had said, hey, sometimes a 4-hour ride isn't 4 hours. There's the before, the after. I've talked to you before about, I had an injury around my Achilles, and you would help me with some foam rolling techniques of the actual technique. Don't just roll it. Hey, sit on this, let the blood flow come back in, once you take your leg off the foam roller, a little bit different techniques with pressure. What kind of habits do you maybe have, whether it be something as simple as, hey, I stretch, or hey, I foam roll, or hey, I drink this smoothie, or I have this? What are a couple of things that Owen is like, you're doing them?
Man, when I'm really spot on, it is we talk about as all the little things. Because most people are out there riding their bikes, they're getting the time in, and it's like, what are the little things? Like, what are we doing to allow our bodies to recover from what we did, right? Because, stress plus recovery equals optimum performance. It's not just, hey, keep beating yourself down, and then, the military mentality, like you're going to get bigger and stronger. Like, no. So, foam rolling's definitely one of them. Like when I used to be more in the running game, like that was something that was just a big component, because I would deal with people that I'd fit them for shoes, and like they'd come in and oh, my knee's killing me, and and it's like it's my shoes, and you're like, it's like saying your car is bumpy and it's because of the tires. Like your alignment's off, your you have no mobility, your chassis sucks. So, I think the biggest thing is people got to realize is when you go out and work out, you're creating like scar tissue, adhesions, trigger points, all up. You're just beating your body up. And so it's like, I think foam rolling is like brushing your teeth. I think that's how important it is. And if anybody can take anything away from what we say today, is like foam rolling is like brushing your teeth. You're literally getting the crap off your muscles, the plaque and the buildup. And that's just going to make your life 500 times better from everything, the mobility in your foot and ankles. Like these guys, a lot of my buddies, like, man, when I was first showing up to a couple of those time trials, man, I'm doing like these dynamic warm-ups and I'm foam rolling in the parking lot. And they're all looking over me like, who is this nutcase, doing, squat lunges, and I got on the bike, man, and I was ready. Like blood was everywhere and I was ready to pump. So I think that's the biggest thing is there's definitely this, I think my runners are real religious with it, right, man? They're going to spend the extra time to get up and foam roll and stretch really well, dynamic warm up. And then when they get done, same thing, that, they're hopping in the ice bath, or they're doing all these other things at the end where, like you said, we're already 4 hours before we even start to put our clothes on and all this other stuff. And it's hard. So I get to people, I'm like, hey, just get into a good routine where like, okay, you brush your teeth, you brush your muscles, and then you go to bed. You kind of create these protocols.
Yeah.
While you're drinking your coffee and you're watching the end of the tour, you got your foam roller there and you're going through your protocol. So for me, like, man, if I was just to like say one big thing, I think it's definitely foam rolling. And doing it correctly is part of the thing too. And so I've always been a big component of the company called TP Therapy or Trigger Point Therapy. But they, Cassidy's the owner there, or was the owner, but just very motivational. But he shows you how to do it. It's like handing somebody a toothbrush the first time and they're like, what do I do with this? And most people, you're right, they got the gun and they're what's you actually doing with it, but no, the other stuff is pretty standard. I tend to do some BCAAs, the protein afterwards and stuff like that, when I'm really, really just on it. I like, B12 injections.
Okay.
I know some people are anti, hey, what can we put in our bodies? What can't we put in our bodies? But, B12 is, everything on that is the positive I've heard. And then I'll do some of the cryotherapy sometimes too.
You're about to be on the lactigo train once you try that stuff out, man.
Oh yeah. All right. I'm waiting for that to come in, cause I won't throw anything else out there that, I tried in the past and that did or didn't work, but
yeah, dude,
I tried some stuff before nationals and I was like, why am I cramping everywhere? And I was like, oh man, I'm never trying to before nationals.
From short duration stuff to, I just did almost 7 hours at 300 and just under 15 watts. It's the recovery. I'm excited to hear from a guy like you once you try that. So that's really good. I love the brushing the muscles. That's a great way. I love that. The stick, I don't know if they still call it that, the one with the little beads on it.
Yep.
I'm amazed that when I come back from a 5-6 hour ride, before I even get in the shower, even just like in 60 seconds, IT band quad, maybe hamstring and my glute. Just the little bit of love before like everything else in life starts happening makes a little difference. And like you're saying, like making coffee, I'm doing like a yoga stretch. I'm getting my hips warmed up. I'm getting the blood flowing. Like, I just think that those little things, they make such a big difference. It's incredible, especially as we get older. Like, I hate saying it, but you're now in the 40 plus category. I'm about to be there in a couple years, which I'm super pumped for, but dude, you are Raleigh is 29. And so he's like, Brendan, you're my inspiration. I said, dude, I don't want to be the inspiration. I want to be inspired. And I said, I'm inspired by Owen Shott. because he's the guy who you're like, who's that guy crushing all the Masters drives? Owen's doing the crit before our crit, and then he's going to be on the podium for the P12 crit. Okay, who the hell is this dude? He's a machine.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned Utah being a couple of the best performances. What do you think? I mean, you're a road race national champion for the Masters 35 plus. I'm guessing that would be, do you consider that your biggest win, or what's your best performance? And tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, that one is it's got to be up there. You know, because I was thinking about it the other day, and you know, just from my numbers, you know, like the numbers were, I mean, almost all record numbers. I mean, it was one of those days that Athens is podium at Athens last year. That probably would have been right up in there, and most people would probably go, okay, a road race national Masters championship, or you know, fourth place at Athens Twilight. You know, it's pretty close. So those are probably the two, and I probably got good stories on both of them. But you know, the Masters Nationals was one of those, like, I went in, I had a teammate, you know, and his goal was just to kind of cover stuff the first lap or two. And then I just knew my fitness was there. It was like 10 days before I had done the group ride, and you know, just something stupid. I normalized like, you know, 390 for like an hour and 15 minutes, which, you know, it's like 6 watts per kilo for me, you know, and so I didn't even say, I just said, I'm ready. Like, it wasn't like,
Yeah.
and I knew like going in.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so I got, you know, I think a lot of people were watching, you know, the guys that won, you know, were up top in the time trial that weekend. You know, Jonathan Jacobs and you know, it was one of those things. He was the defending champ. The course played out well, so everybody's watching him, and like, you and a handful of guys got up the road, and I was just like, I was getting frustrated. I mean, just my teammate was gone, and I was just like, you know, I had to tell myself, be patient. It's a long day. And
a long day in Georgia.
Yeah, I think I finally looked. Yeah, I finally looked over at you know, Jonathan, and I said, dude, like, let's go together. I know we can bridge this gap, you know, and so, you know, yeah, on the finish line hill, it's about 1 minute and 20 seconds or something like that, and I went up that thing at, you know, I think I was like 10 watts per kilo for like a minute up it, you know, so I was over 600 watts just flying up that thing. And I turn around, and it was him, Ariel Herman, who ended up winning nationals this year. And that is another part of it, is like, if you look at that race, how many national champions actually were in that day. You know, Jaden was up the road with you, who ended up winning the crit the next day. I mean, it was just a loaded field. You know, so we end up bridging across, and that effort for me to bridge was, you know, I think I went like 380 for 20 minutes. So it's just, all the numbers were there. And so I got there, and you could tell, like, some guys were tired. I think you were still feeling pretty good. And all of a sudden we turned around, and yeah, well, there was like 7 of us, and all of a sudden, like, we don't even do a half a lap, and there's 5 of us, you know, and I just looked at everybody, and I said, dude, this is the podium. We all need to work. Like, let's just go, everybody rotate. And I'm feeling amazing, man. I'm, you know, I think I had to go back, talk to Bruno. Bruno, if you don't work, I'm gonna start attacking you or something, you know. So Bruno started working. So yeah, we made it, you know, we got a pretty good gap, and then it was like a lap to go. We came up that first hill, and I was like, man, I'm just gonna see what happens. And I hit it, and literally got rid of Bruno and Ariel. And you were on the little, what was that, the rivet or the string, man. You were hanging on, and I was like, okay, me and Jonathan are gone. And you just kind of rolled us back, and I was like, okay, there's 3 of us, you know. And then I think the next hill I went again, and you finally were like, dude, come on, man. Like, oh, let's go. You know, but I'm a $145 going up these hills, and, you know, and you're just like, hey man, steady on the hill. And this is a lesson that I learned, right? Like, go up the hills steady, and then when you come over the top of them, frickin' then hit it, you know. And at that time, I didn't know. I was just like, all right, I'm gonna do what I got to do. And but yeah, I don't know if I ever told you. I think we came through the 15K to go sign, and
Okay.
I'm cramping. I'm cramping bad. Like I'm like every time like you would kind of make a surge, I had to like stand up. I couldn't surge sitting down because I would cramp. And I had 2 gels left. I don't know how I had 2 gels left, but I literally opened them both at the same time and like took 2 power gels, and I had a half a bottle of water and just chugged the rest of it. And that's probably with like 15K to go. And I was like, dang, dude, I just gotta like get there. I was like, oh, I got a top 3, and I was like kind of pumped. And then I got a text message. This was at the time where I'd linked my phone to my Garmin, and I got a text message from my teammate. He's like, "You can do it, focus."
Oh my
And
God, dude.
yeah, and I was like, "You're right," like I'm here. And at the time, I
Damn
was working.
him.
Yeah, and at the time, I was working with Tommy Danielson. He was coaching me, and we had gone out and I'd done a camp with him out in Tucson, and Tom had it basically, like, there's a big camp and a bunch of guys, and we were all just kind of working, and all of a sudden it's like me and Tom left, and we're just flying, and Tom keeps attacking me, right? And I'm like, you ain't got none for me, this is like a little idol to me. And I'm like, no, I'm not letting Tommy go. And then we came over the next hill, and I was like, I'm gonna punch him as hard as I can on this next hill. And like I went and I put him in the hurt locker, but he brought me back. And so then he sat on me the rest of the ride, and we got done, and he goes, dude, you gotta wait. He goes, you gotta wait. You should have just played possum with me, and let me go a couple more times, and then really hit me when it was just all done and you could see the finish line. So I'm sitting there in that breakaway with the two of you, and I'm going, just wait. It's uphill finish, just wait. And you attacked with what? Was it 3K or 2K to go?
Yeah, before, because I was like, I gotta wait. The last lap, I was messed up. I had been out there all day.
Yeah.
Just did way too much work. And I was like, my explosiveness, these guys, I don't stand a chance right now. I'm going to try and sneak away, and hopefully because I'm trying to remember how it played out. I was thinking that you might not chase, and I didn't know Jonathan then, but he had the Bissell kit on, and I was like, I recognized his name from something. I'm like, you know what? He might not want to chase, and he might try and make Owen chase, and maybe they just look at each other. So it was like, it was that portion where you come over that like kind of long roller, and then it's downhill into the finish, and like right before we were cresting that, I think is when I tried to get away, and he chased me down, I believe.
Yeah, so it's 3K, because when you hit the bottom of the hill, it's 1K to go, and then it's 1K to the finish pretty much. But yeah, so that was totally you went, and he didn't even hesitate. Like, he didn't even look at me. He just like
I looked back and I was like, damn it, I'm gonna get caught.
So he went, and I was right then. I was like sitting there, and I'm going, dude, I'm getting this free ride. You had just made your move, and I was like, I'm gonna go. And then I said, I heard my coach in the back of my head said, and then I kind of was like, well, dang, Jonathan just pulled him back. Like he's gonna do the same, and like we weren't to the hill yet, and so I was like, nah, just be patient. So yeah, he pulled you back, and then we all kind of just looked at each other,
like sitting there, like, all right. And I was like, this is about to go down in 2 seconds, and it ain't going.
He hit the hill. He went, and I mean, it was almost identical to the next year, but he went, and I was like just right on him. I was like, you ain't going anywhere, and I kind of looked back, and we'd gapped you, and so he looked back at me, and I mean, just like the split second that he turned around, I was just like, go,
gone.
And this is one of those.
Demoralized him so much that I caught him. And then he was like, hell no. And he took off. I was like, oh, that was a beat down on the hill.
Yeah. So I would say that was definitely it. And that was another one, man. Like, we're 3.5 hours in, I think that what race was. And I was still able to do like 600 watts for a minute again, which is, like 9 watts per kilo. I'd already thrown down 3,000 kilojoules easy, and it was like, there's the kill shot was there. So it was just
Yeah.
all these little things came together, perfectly. And again, it is looking back, and like, the following year you go on to win. Jonathan had won the previous year. So you literally had the three guys who won, all 3 years. And so it was just, I think that was kind of epic. I mean, Athens was kind of similar. Well, I don't know. Athens, I was like, should I even do this race?
Dude, I couldn't believe it when somebody told me this. I'm like, what, the Masters race? They're like, no, the pro race. I was like, what?
Yeah. I mean, I had one of my buddies who I really look up to that's been in this, the cycling area forever. And he's like, dude, he's like, yeah, same thing. He's just like, that's epic, and
Huge.
And it was one of those. The best thing I think everybody needs to learn from that, though, is that race. And so a lot of people think of crits, right? And, you want to talk about this off, and my highest 5-second power for that race was 761 watts. 5 seconds, 761. So look out however you want, like, cause I look at a lot of files and I'm like, you got to smooth it out. And like, no, it was a crit, man. It was like, and I'm like, dude, if I can, do it at Athens, Twilight, and I hit 1,000, but like, I mean, it was like, I remember I gapped a couple guys one time and they were yelling at me and I'm like, dude, calm down. I'll be there in just a second. Let me close it back down. And even like I did it for Frank one time and he kind of gave me a little wink and he's like, thanks, man. I was like, yeah, dude, I ain't gonna leave you like that, and so yeah, that was another epic race that just, it could have played totally different. And I just got gapped and going into one of the corners, I didn't have enough testicular fortitude, as some people would say. And Danny Summerhill went in, he just kept going into turn one at like 2 miles an hour faster than I wanted to every time. And I was like, dude, I just didn't have the bike skills that he had. And so, yeah, he gapped us. And then I should have just closed it down, and I kind of played that, I'll let the other two guys do it. And Diaz just jumped us. And then I was like, oh God, we're in trouble now. So
it's interesting that you bring up the power and crits, because a lot of people, I was talking to a woman and she's going from Cat 3, getting into the P12. And I'm like, a lot of times the people that are going on, off, that's the washing machine. That's the middle group of people that aren't winning, that are eventually going to get dropped. They're in the rubber band. It gets strung out, and everyone, the leaders are trying to be smooth with their power. They're going to be attacking. And before we're talking to bridging to a break, they might let a few guys go, waiting till if there's a feature like a small climb, they're bridging. They're doing a 2-minute, 3-minute VO2 max effort.
Right.
They don't want to be doing 1,000 watts, 1,200 watts over and over and over again. So I think it's really important that athletes hear that, especially coming from a guy like you that does so well on crits, that some people might say, Owen's not a crit rider. He doesn't sprint all the time. It's like, yeah, he can put out 360 watts for way longer than the race is even going to last. That's how this guy wins these crits that he does so well in. So it's just changing the mindset of how people approach a race. But I think it also addresses the fact that you're able to look at your skill set and say, hey, I'm good at these things. How do I apply that to doing well in this race?
Right.
As opposed to, I think a lot of people see a race and they're like, okay, I got to be able to sprint this to win a crit. No, like my mindset is I'm trying to turn this thing into a time trial.
Right.
If it comes down to 20 of us, I'm not winning. Like I need to put in some efforts that separate us. So, dude, this has been incredible. You have such a depth of knowledge. I think my last question for you as we come upon an hour is, what are your, COVID's been I know between talking to us, one of your big things was going to be going out to Vancouver in 2020 for the Masters Worlds. What do you see on the outlook for 2021 as your big goals that you're trying to hit? Because you've been telling me that you're going back into triathlon, which makes me a little sad, but I understand because you can also still race master stuff. So maybe we're going to hear some tri goals in there. And what keeps you motivated, man? I mean, maybe it's just that you're a lifelong athlete, but everyone is sort of motivated by different things in the sport because, like you're saying, I think we're lucky having coaching businesses where I look at part of my riding as part of work. But what keeps you going, man? Like, you love to ride, you love to train. So I guess I'm throwing a lot in this one question, but
Yeah.
goals and motivation.
Yeah. So the motivation's been definitely difficult this year, and it's gotten harder as the year's gone on, because I just kept having these glimmers, right? Okay, we'll move the date back, or and so and for me it was like I didn't really need to be ready until September. So when everything popped up, I was like, oh, we're doing Worlds, like my focus is there. And so then when they threw Worlds out, I was like, okay, Nationals is still a possibility. I'm 40 plus, I'll be the new guy. So maybe I can go there and pull one or two titles. But then it just went away, and we got both of our state championships that are going to happen here in October, and it's like it's been difficult. So it's been more actually for me. One of my athletes and teammates is going really well right now, Will Jessup. And so that's been actually my motivation, is to show up well for him. I mean, anybody that watches this, if I go up the road, you probably should turn around and go back, but I really want to, that's been my motivation lately, is just for him and some of my other athletes that I'll get the opportunity to race with in age group championships and stuff like that. So that's that kind of, as Brendan, you get athletes that maybe you're raced with or something like that. It's kind of a bittersweet when they win and you don't win, and you're like, man, that's just as exciting for me.
Yeah.
Last year at the state championships, I didn't win any state titles, and but like my athletes just had lined them up. I mean, just podium after, I think I had 11 podiums or something like that, and I was just like, awesome, sold. So that's been my motivation as of lately, is more just for my teammates and some of my athletes wanting to help them. So for 21 goals, off the record, I was like, man,
This is going on the internet.
Yeah, this is going on the internet. So, I really had kind of thought about Ironman Florida in 2021. There's a lot of different things. I never really got to have my best running marathon. And, I had some good half marathon times and stuff like that. And I think I could get back to, where I could run, 6-minute pace for a marathon. And then, the Ironman kind of falls into play. I look at some of these power profiles for some of these athletes that are winning these races, and I'm going, holy cow, the dude averaged whatever. I'm like, I can do that for 4 hours and 20 minutes or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I really, like, big hindsight, I'd love to go to Ironman Florida and win. Mm-hmm. Just to say it, check Ironman off the bucket list. I've never done the full. I've done a couple halves, and then still have some fitness to go race with my teammates, compete in some masters events. But that was before this year started, and going into this year, I really wanted to, I thought I had a great opportunity to go to the World Championships. It was a mountaintop finish in Vancouver. So it's like a 20 or 30 mile climb, and I was like, dude, sign me up, like that, all day long. Yeah. I don't know if you looked at the course, but it was like, you got to climb like an hour or something like that,
I didn't realize that. Why was I planning to go?
No, that when I saw that course, and like I had messaged one of my other buddies, he's like, yeah, I've done that climb. He's like, it's epic, and it's not like a straight up, but I mean, it's still 3% or 4% the whole way. It's a good Mount Mitchell or Mount Lemmon, and those I've done really good on those. And so, that's still, I guess I'm kind of going to see what happens with Worlds, where they're going to put the course, if it plays out well, then I might just say, okay, we'll give it one more year. You know, it's not like Ironman's not going to be there the following year. So yeah, right now I'm kind of in the wash machine, just trying to figure it out and
Cool. That's
stay
fair. They're
motivated.
all lofty goals, whichever ones you decide on. That's for sure. It's
Yeah.
awesome. I think a trip to Vancouver would be fun either way. I think that was my big motivation. I was like, oh, you know what? Like when we got to race in France together,
Yeah.
Grand Fondo Worlds, just going over there, being there, you know, some people will be like, dude, it's a Grand Fondo. And I'm like, you go race with the dudes.
Yeah.
Like, a Grand Fondo over there to them is a bike race.
Race. Yeah.
You're worse.
Yeah.
Insane.
Call it what you want, man. We did that when you were off the front, and I remember when we were chasing you back on the one climb. I was like, oh, I'm gonna attack on this climb and bridge across, and it was a 10-minute climb, and I went like I had to hold like 406 watts up the climb, and I mean or something. I was like, dude, these guys are for real, you know.
Dude, we
So
went through, I was with maybe 6 guys, and there were times where like I'm gonna get popped out of this break. And
yeah,
we were going through some of those little towns and just ripping at an uncomfortably fast pace. Like when we're talking about bike skills, I'm like, I do not have these on these little roads. Like this is gnarly. And one guy from Belgium, I
yeah,
think he actually eventually popped. He was hammering just so hard up these little like rollers and climbs. I was like, dude, this is gonna be a long day. But
yeah,
man, Owen, thank you for sharing your time and knowledge and experience. And this is going to be extremely valuable for so many people. I look forward to once the COVID passes and we can get some
yeah.
rides in down in Florida, especially as the weather cools off up here. And yeah, man, really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, brother. And yeah, when you get down here, let me know, and we'll definitely go for some rides.
I like that because when you were talking, like I'm down in Fort Lauderdale, you're in Jacksonville. Like, dude, I know it's not directly on the way, but I will definitely have to make a pit stop. And now that Nationals is in Florida next year, they just released that. We're gonna have to do some scouting for sure.
Yeah, I'm literally I can ride to the course in less than 40 minutes, so I'm on the course. So yeah, I mean I
Yeah.
think they're gonna change the course this next year, but that's a whole nother thing. So
Okay. Well,
yeah,
it'd be good to see. We'll go ride the old course then, anyways.
yeah, for sure.
Awesome, man. Well, have a
All right,
great week. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you soon.
all right, buddy. Talk to you later.
See ya.